remote workers, the new normal. Here's the reality. We are in unprecedented times. As the saying goes, may you live in interesting times. As a result of COVID-19, massive segments of the U.S. workforce were forced to transition to working from home. Now, we've all been so busy kind of dealing with all of this new reality that we may not fully realize that something like this has actually never happened before. Not just the pandemic, but this massive shift towards entire segments of the U.S. workforce being asked to now do their jobs from home. Prior to the pandemic, less than 5% of the U.S. workforce worked from home more than 50% of the time. Working from home was a luxury, something that just a few people got to participate in. If you worked from home on a Friday, that basically meant that you got the opportunity to start your 3-day weekend just a little bit earlier. But then suddenly everybody who could work from home was being asked to work from home. And we weren't working from home alone. We had our kids with us. So suddenly then your living room became the office and your kids' bedroom became their classroom. And we adapted. But there's something else that's happening also, which is that CFOs and CEOs are looking at the fact that their business is working just fine with their employees remote. They're also looking at the bottom line and going, okay, wait a minute, you can't have cubicles stacked up one on top of each other like you did before. You're now going to go ahead and have to have more space between them, which means you're now going to have even more real estate. And so we're starting to see headlines in the news like these. Facebook starts planning for permanent remote workers. Twitter tells their employees they can work from home for forever. Slack to offer permanent work from home to most of its employees. Nationwide Insurance just announced that they were closing regional offices in 5 different states and transitioning a significant portion of their workforce to working from home and letting go of that commercial real estate. A lot of CFOs are planning to permanently shift significant numbers of their employees to working remotely, because the reality is that flexible hours and working from home is pretty much going to become a new normal. According to Gartner, 74% of organizations are planning to shift a portion of their workforce to remote work permanently. HR leaders are indicating, however, that poor technology, lack of infrastructure are the biggest barriers. We got suddenly thrust into this work-from-home experiment. As one HR person said, we're being forced into the world's largest work-from-home experiment, and it hasn't been easy for a lot of organizations to implement, but we're making our way through it. Now, we're going to be talking about some of the challenges, and since pretty much the entire U.S. workforce experienced this, we're going to just use my alma mater as an example. So we'll use UCLA. I graduated from University of California, Los Angeles. Now UCLA has over 41,000 students and 40,000 employees. Their total revenue is $6.8 billion. If they were a publicly traded company, they'd be a Fortune 500 company. On March 16th, it was announced that the campus was closing. All students were told to go home, and all employees were told that they had to work remotely. Now, because classes and all operations were going to be remote, the purchasing department began scrambling to secure laptops and iPads for professors and staff. They just simply did not have enough inventory at the time, and they were scrambling to do this while everybody else in the country was scrambling to get laptops and iPads for their individuals. As a matter of fact, a good friend of mine works for the city attorney's office in San Francisco. They couldn't get laptops, so The attorneys had to bring home their desktop machines. And the added issue is that those devices were not being properly provisioned because many organizations did not have systems in place to remotely provision a new piece of hardware. Additionally, their existing network security protocols were not prepared for the shift because here's the other piece. Every remote worker in an organization expands the attack surface for the hackers and the bad guys. It's one more potential entry point into the corporate network. But UCLA, like everybody, adapted. They adapted as best they could. Fall classes are expected to be a combination of both remote and in person. And by the way, that's probably going to be the norm. Not everybody is willing to go back into an office complex on a day-to-day basis. And so many employers who may not have fully embraced this idea of remote work, they're going to need to offer an option for people who don't feel comfortable going back in and being surrounded by their coworkers for 8 or 10 hours a day. At UCLA, the staff has been told that they can expect to stay working from home until 2021 at a minimum, and then the organization is looking at how to transition those to permanent remote workers. Now, all of this chaos is also opportunities to be of assistance to your customers. There's a lot of major concerns. One is security, and as we'll touch on. According to the FBI, email phishing campaigns have increased up to 350%. The bad guys are ramping up big time. Additionally, IT outsourcing. If you've got customers who already had stretched IT departments, well, now they're really being stretched because now they need to find a way to go ahead and support all of those remote workers, and your IT people, in many cases, also have to work remote. So there's an additional opportunity for those of you who are in the managed services field to go ahead and be of service to your customers. And then training and education. So UCLA, as I mentioned, they're huge, $6.8 billion in revenue. Well, obviously not everybody's that big. A lot of your smaller organizations are not sure about exactly how to implement this remote from work experiment, and they can use your help. Your guidance, your expertise can really make a difference for them.